Deputy Neville has 6 minutes.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. First of all, I'd like to just commend Deputy Brown for bringing the bill forward today, and also speak mainly in the 4 minutes I have around what was mentioned earlier on around stigma. I do believe that stigma is starting to break down, but we still have a long way to go. I think it's probably a different facet in different generations. So I'm very heartened by the younger generation when I speak to teenagers, how a lot more open they are in relation to mental health. My own age group maybe not as open, and as we get older, probably not as open again. And that's through no fault of anyone. That's just I suppose, a cultural belief or cultural entrenchment. But we need to continue to try and break that down as best we can. And I believe the likes of discussing it here in the Dáil, like we have, as was mentioned 6 times earlier on tonight, and having these open discussions is very welcome. Particularly for the people who are watching, and I, as always, want to be mindful of the sensitivities of people that may have been affected by this issue as well. I'd just like to reiterate as well that this is an all-Ireland challenge, and this is in no way political. This is with the greatest of respect, but suicide rates in Northern Ireland are considerably high, the highest in the UK. At 16.5 per 100,000. And that's not taken away from the problems and the challenges we have in the Republic as well. I understand there's different complexities in the north as well, but we have to be mindful of that. And when we're here and we're having a discussion on it, we have to try, I believe, in mental health, be as apolitical as we possibly can in relation to this. I understand sometimes politics will creep into it, but we have to try and be apolitical as much as we can for the best interests of our country. Locally, I'd like to welcome the development of Jigsaw in Limerick and in the Midwest region. Going back to stigma, we must be mindful that stigma leads others to avoid living, socialising and working and renting to, employing people with mental disorders, especially severe disorders such as schizophrenia. It leads to low self-esteem, isolation and hopelessness. It deters the public from seeking and wanting to pay for care. Responding to stigma, people with mental health problems internalise public attitudes and become so embarrassed or ashamed that they often conceal symptoms and fail to seek treatment. And that's the basis and the kernel of stigma, and that's what we need to keep combating. We need to strive for that. It's down to the lack of knowledge, negative attitudes, hostile behaviour. I'd like to get behind stigma. I want to talk about it more. Why do individuals stigmatise? According to Aware and their website, I just picked this up today, sadly, stigmatisation is actually a natural part of the human condition. When one is faced with something unknown, the natural reaction is fight or flight. In such a scenario, we make decisions rapidly, making general assumptions about what's going on, and filling in any blanks in our knowledge with other information which we do not actually know to be true. We sometimes tend to fill in these blanks based on previous stereotypes. So we must really get behind stigma and understand it if we are to try and articulate this issue and try and combat it. The effects of stigma are obviously shame, blame, secrecy, isolation, social exclusion and discrimination. So, it's the one thing I really think we need to focus on and start finding the pillars within this area and eradicate stigma, because, as I said from the outset, we're starting to eradicate stigma in how we discuss mental health, which is welcome, how we discuss mental health in front of others, which is welcome, but now we have to try and eradicate stigma, self-stigma in relation to people feeling comfortable about opening up, feeling comfortable about approaching the services and actually speaking about their own challenges as well. And I believe that that's the next phase we have to go. I've seen some commentators state that over the past 6 to 8 months, and I think we're starting to move on to that part of it. But it's still a long process, and we still need to move forward on that. I'd also like to speak about the other models that are I suppose, adopted in relation to or in conjunction with the medicinal models, such as the likes of the creative arts. I'm a huge believer in the creative arts and what it can do in mental health, the way it focuses on relationships, meanings, values. Art is therapeutic. The likes of art, drama and poetry offer space where meaning can be generated, confidence can be encouraged, and it's quite open-ended and ambiguous, and that actually helps. in relation to it. And you know, how many times have we heard of artists finding inspiration from their own challenges and their own mental health encounters, and how they have used that in their arts. And creative people bring a different perspective and an open-endedness, as I said, and a comfortable ambiguity. And I think that should be used in conjunction with therapy as well. And obviously I'm open to correction from medicinal people with medicinal backgrounds that would have qualifications in the area. But just from my own research on that, I'm a great believer in using it in conjunction. We also have to examine and keep examining around dual diagnosis, addiction and mental health. We need to address that and attack that. We need to use the integration between both and use the pilot projects that I've seen have been presented to me, along with Deputy Brown, a member of the Cross-Party Mental Health Committee, in how these pilot projects are using dual diagnosis in combating addiction and mental health. And that's something that really needs to be addressed, that integrated approach there, because there is huge amounts of complexities around, with, say, the use of alcohol. The people who have been around alcohol may not have been directly affected by alcohol, but would be the loved ones, our offspring, our partners, either be alcohol or drugs. We've seen more and more recreational drug use now. We have seen it explode in the last 20 years. From a society point of view, we're probably seeing presentations in relation to that, particularly synthetic drugs, happening as well. So this is something that has to be combated. But I welcome the debate today, but would ask that we would continue to try and combat stigma in a big way. Thank you.
We now move to Deputy Anne Rabbitte, who I'm